So today I want to talk about long runs. We're just less than 3 weeks out till the Chicago Marathon. Many of you that have been training hard for 8, 10, 12, sometimes more than 12 weeks for the Chicago Marathon would have already done plenty of long runs at this point. But I think having spent a lot of time studying this space, obviously a lot of time studying elite athletes training and also looking at my own training, I've concluded that there are 4 types of long runs that are really specific to the marathon that I think that if you can hit all 4 of these types of long runs in the last, say, 6 weeks leading into a marathon, you're going to prepare yourself as best you possibly can leading into the marathon that you're preparing for. Now, there's something to be said for doing long runs well before, 6 weeks before the marathon. Of course, you want to be probably ideally up to doing 2-hour runs with 10 weeks to go until the marathon, or maybe even 12 weeks to go before the marathon. But when you get closer to the marathon, you want to be really specific with your training. And these long, slow, easy runs, way slower than the goal pace that you want to hit in training, are going to become a little unspecific for what you want to do. They're still going to be helpful and there's nothing really wrong with them, but you really want to be running at very close to your goal marathon pace in training. But there's really 4 types of long runs, in my opinion, that you can do to really maximize your performance come race day. So these are long runs that you want to be doing within the last 6 to 8 weeks of the marathon. And I've already done 3 of these types of long runs, and the final one I'll be doing at least 1 of, maybe even 2 of, undecided, in these last sort of 3 weeks. So the first one is a long tempo run at about 90 to 95% of your goal marathon pace. Renato Canova loves these types of long runs. He prescribes it to many of his athletes. Many of these athletes have run under 2:05 for the marathon or under 2:20 women in the marathon. And you want to try and understand roughly, or specifically if you can, what your goal marathon pace is before hitting this long run. Then you have to understand, like all long runs or all workouts, what are the conditions you're going to run in, and are you under any sort of training fatigue, which you almost certainly will be at this point in the marathon block. And then you want to try and understand, well, where is 90 to 95% of this goal marathon pace? And you want to try and do a continuous run of somewhere between, I would say for advanced runners, somewhere between 10 miles and up to 16 miles, or maybe even up to 18 miles for some people, at that speed continuously. And the beauty of this is a few things. One, you're very close to your LT1 lactate threshold, the first lactate threshold point, which is a very, very efficient stimulus to be running in. You gain a lot of endurance from running in this zone. Someone call it sort of zone 3, sort of low end to middle end of zone 3. And it's also very psychologically specific to the marathon as well, because you have to get used to running one pace somewhat uncomfortably towards the end for a very long time. And if you do it properly, you're going to get to sort of 3/4 of the way through this run and kind of feel like you want to stop. You're kind of very tired, very bored. You're probably sick of running one pace for up to 90 minutes or sometimes up to 2 hours. And these types of long runs are super specific and very effective for marathon training. If you're a beginner, you want to be probably doing closer to 8 to 12 miles or 12 to maybe up to 20 kilometers. But for an advanced runner, you want to be sort of 20 to even up to 30K. And last week, unfortunately, I didn't take any video footage of this, but I was out at Waterfall Glen, a place where many people in Chicago would know where exactly that is and how lovely that course is. A little bit hilly, but we did 30K at 3:31 per kilometer, which if we were on the flat here in Chicago on the lakefront and it wasn't as hot as it was that day, it'd probably be the same effort as doing about 3:25 per kilometer. So that's about 96% of my goal marathon pace. 3:25 that is. But we were running at Waterfall Glen, warmer conditions. We adjusted it back and did about 3:31 per kilometer, which is about 5:38, 5:39 per mile pace. And that's right in the middle of 90 to 95% of my goal marathon pace. And so these sorts of long runs are very effective, as I said multiple times now, and I highly recommend adding these into your marathon plan. It might be a little bit too late at this point if you're training for Chicago, but if you are training for New York or Valencia or something next year, I think these sorts of long runs are very effective. The second one is a workout that I've done a couple of times already, and it's an alternating pace tempo run. So this is probably be a little bit shorter than what I just said, probably closer to, for advanced runners, about 20 to 23 kilometers or about 12 to 14 miles. And for beginner runners, you probably want to be doing closer to maybe about 7 to 10 miles or 10K to 15K, where you're alternating some blocks of effort or blocks of time or blocks of distance at just faster than your goal marathon pace and doing recovery blocks at just slower than your marathon pace. So for me, my goal marathon pace is right around 3:15 to 3:17 per kilometer, which would land me at about a 2:17 to 2:19 marathon. And I was doing I've done 2 workouts. The first one I did probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago now. I did 4 miles, 3 miles, 2 miles, 1 mile. I actually did a video about this where I was doing the 4, 3, 2, 1 miles at a little bit faster than my goal marathon pace at about 2:13, 2:14 marathon pace, or 5:10 mile pace, 5:11 mile pace. And the float recoveries were at about 5:40 to 5:50 mile pace, so a little bit slower. And it ends up averaging pretty close to your goal marathon pace in the full run. This is, you could call this a fartlek if you want. You could call it an alternating pace tempo run, which is what I call it. But this type of workout is very effective for marathon training and marathon racing because you're pushing your heart rate, your lactate levels probably a little bit above what they should be at LT1, probably close to LT2. But then just as it gets to the point where it's probably accumulating lactic acid a little bit too much for what you want to be doing, you get the recovery, float recovery, where it comes back down, heart rate, lactates, effort, etc. And you're continuously alternating between one or the other. Another very common one is 1K on, 1K float, 1K on, 1K float. You could do up to 20K for beginners, up to probably 30K for advanced runners. I've seen Melbourne Track Club athletes and other athletes in Australia and around the place do up to 30K of this, but I think 20K is plenty. And for real beginners, someone doing their first marathon or second marathon, even 14, 15K or 9 miles is more than enough. The third one is something that I did last week, and I will show you a bit of footage from this afterwards. I did a progressive long run of 30 kilometers where every 5K I tried to get a little bit faster than the last 5K, and I wanted to be hitting my goal marathon pace just about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the run. So I thought to myself, right, my goal marathon pace is 3:15 to 3:17 per kilometer. I basically want to be there in the 4th or the 5th 5K block. So I did some math and thought, okay, I'll do the first 5K at about 3:35 per kilometer, second 5K at about 3:30, and 3:25, 3:20, 3:15, and 3:10. So you want to be trying to do the last 5K a little bit faster than your goal marathon pace if you can, but if you're feeling very fatigued and very tired through that sort of 4th and 5th block, you have the option always to try and maintain your goal marathon pace at the end. So once again, I want to just reiterate something that I said at the very beginning. I've sort of brushed over it quickly. You want to make sure that the conditions are pretty good for this workout. And if they're not, of course, you can't make sure of that. But if they're not, you have to adjust your paces a little bit. So if it's very warm or it's very windy or you're feeling generally very fatigued, then adjust your goal marathon pace by a few seconds per kilometer or a few seconds per mile to just adjust for the fact that you're probably training in conditions that are going to be a little bit harder than race day. But who knows, maybe race day will also be really warm, or you'll feel generally tired from work or whatever it may be. But do keep in mind that you don't want to necessarily hit exactly your goal marathon pace in these workouts if the conditions aren't ideal. If the conditions are ideal, then you can try and shoot for that. Once again, assuming that you've got super shoes on and everything else is pretty similar to what you'll have on race day. So back to the progressive long run. I think beginners could do 15K or maybe even 20K, and advanced runners can do all the way up to 20 miles, 32K. I chose 30K. I think this was a good distance for me as I'm shooting for around that 2:16, 2:17, 2:18 marathon. And this workout was absolutely perfect for me. It was exactly what I wanted. Very windy. It'll be a side wind most of the way. Well, all the way. Warm up done. I'm a little bit nervous for this, to be honest.
Nervous?
Yeah, it's going to be hard at the end. 30K, getting faster every 5K. We're going to go 7K, 7.5K I think that way to the end, loop, and then 22.5K straight shot down south. Something about doing like a point to point, well technically not because we started at home, but I do like shooting straight down south. The wind is sort of coming sideways, but it'll be very slight tail going down south for the majority, but not really because it's basically just hitting from the side. So it shouldn't affect us that much. But the main goal of today is to really practice everything. Well, when I say everything, I mostly mean fueling. So 100 grams of carbs an hour via the char gels and the drink mix. There's just a bit of sugar with some electrolyte tablet. And yeah, I'm wearing the Alphafly 3s, although I'm almost certain I'll wear the Alphafly 1s on race day. That's my favorite shoe.
And the reason why I'm wearing these today is because I don't want to wear out the Alphafly ones. I've only got one pair. And yeah, hopefully this goes well. It should be pretty comfortable for the first half. 335, 330, 325. That's 545, I think, in mile pace. And getting down through the middle, we should be at pretty close to 530 mile pace, or 325. That should still be pretty comfortable. It should start to get pretty hard just after 20K, when we're down at 315s. And the fifth section of 6, the fifth 5K is basically my goal marathon pace. So yeah, 335, 330, 25, 20, 15, 10. 315 from 20 to 25K, that's basically goal marathon. That's like 217, 216 marathon pace. And the last 5K is gonna be really hard because that's basically 212, 211 marathon pace, but it's basically my half marathon pace, or slightly slower. All right, I'm gonna get started in a minute, a few more stretches. All right, I am gonna go with the sunnies. The sun will be out. Ready? 3, 2. So far so good. Should be like full split 17, 48, 49. 329. That's like 537, I think. So almost at 9K. Yeah. Warm up basically done. 20K now.
I'm never on some switching side shit. I switch gears to the night shift. Blacking out cause I'm enlightened. God talk to me in silence, but I hear him every time, man.
Second 5K done. 17:25. A little bit quicker now. Now number 4 should be 16:40. $112 to the half. Almost to the last one. 312. Really good. Nice. Got really tough towards the end. That was exactly what I wanted. The last 5K was hard, but it was basically my half marathon pace. 308, 309 per kilometer, which is like 505, 504. Perfect. Stoked for that. 5K cool down to make 40K. And then everything we can possibly do to recover. Pretty windy, eh?
Yeah.
I couldn't even really tell if it was helping me or not. It was sort of like, because the path's like this, it helps you in some parts, and then some parts
it doesn't. Sorry. That last 5K, there was like a point in the middle, around 2.5K, where we were like directly into the wind for like half a kilometer. I was just like, it's horrible. These are so good. I said after the workout that it was pretty much exactly the paces that I wanted to hit. I was slightly under those paces that I said. I was 334, 329, 324, 318, 313, and then 309 per kilometer, and it was pretty warm towards the end. A little bit warmer than I hope race day is, probably close to 17 degrees Celsius or 62, 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So this sort of long run is also very, very effective. If you're building up a little bit of fatigue in your legs in that first sort of half or 2/3 of the run, where you've already done about ideally 12 to maybe even upwards of 20 kilometers at a pretty steady pace, not too far off your goal marathon pace, and then you're really trying to hit 10 to 15K for advanced runners or 7 to 10K for beginner runners at your goal marathon pace, and then ideally even slightly faster at the end, getting down to close to your half marathon pace. So for me, that's exactly what I did. And the way that you can structure this is just go, what's your goal marathon pace? That's where you want to be at the 4th or the 5th, somewhere around there, 5K block, and then adjust backwards from there, and then try and make sure your final one is a little bit faster than that. So you can put any targets on there that you like, but ideally your graph wants to look a little bit like this, the one that I've got here, just getting a little bit faster every 5K and finishing very strong. Before we continue, I just want to thank some of the sponsors of the YouTube channel and my series leading into the Chicago Marathon. Blenders Sunglasses sent me a pair of glasses to try out, and they are sponsoring this video series. I've been loving the Coastal X2s. I've been running in these on the lakefront, and a few people have given me compliments actually, people that I know. But I really like these. I think the lenses are fantastic for running. They do not slide down your face, the glasses, like many do for me. Oftentimes when I'm sweating, they fly down here, but they sit very well on my face. I'm not sure what you think of the color. I quite like them. I picked these ones myself, and I've been really enjoying these. They also sent me a couple of the sort of hardcore sports sunglasses. I haven't had the nerve to use these yet on the lakefront, but I hopefully will at some point soon. But a huge thank you to Blenders for sponsoring this video series. And yeah, I highly recommend you check out Blenders' website yourself to see what they have that you might enjoy. Ketone IQ have been sponsoring the Sweat Elite YouTube channel for some time now, and if you haven't tried the peach flavor yet with caffeine, I strongly recommend you do, because if you struggle with the first flavor, which does the job, but the flavor is definitely questionable, I strongly recommend you checking this out, because this is a great flavor. As I said, 100 milligrams of caffeine, which is very similar to a regular coffee. I have this every single morning when I wake up. I find it very useful for brain energy and also just general energy throughout the day. And I mentioned in the last video, I've been utilizing this for appetite suppression as well, when I've been trying to reduce some calories during the day. Don't judge me on that. Go watch the last video if you want to learn more. But this is a fantastic replacement for just snacks if you want to gain a little bit of energy without eating really anything at all, and it's only 70 calories. And yeah, I'll also be taking this during the marathon, one in the first half and one in the second half, because I find it really useful just mentally to feel like I'm just getting a little bit of a brain energy boost through the marathon. And I think towards the end of the marathon, that's something that kills most people, just brain energy. Oftentimes their body feels okay, but they just generally feel really fatigued. And so obviously glucose is a huge help in that situation, but also ketones being a second fuel source, I definitely recommend trying it out yourself. And you can score 30% off by heading to ketone.com/sweatelite. I strongly recommend giving it a go and seeing if it works for you. It does work for most people, and it's working for so many of the world's best athletes, including Cole Hocker, Cooper Tier, Des Linden, Sarah Hall, Cam Worth, Sam Laidlow, so many more. So if the world's best athletes are utilizing it, I recommend that you try it out yourself too. Kaizen has also been sponsoring this YouTube series, and I highly recommend checking it out yourself if you're training for the marathon. It's currently predicting me to run 2:16:39 at the Chicago Marathon, which I think if I can figure out how to get through this race without cramping, and the conditions are very cool, which is what I'm going to really need it to be if I want to get through the race and run the best time I possibly can, I would say that prediction is pretty good. I mean, I will probably predict more like 2:17 to 2:18, but let's see. If you haven't yet downloaded Kaizen, it's very easy to do. Just download the application, you connect your Strava account, and one important thing that you have to do is go to the top right menu, the little hamburger menu, and you select Tailor Prediction, and you load all of your races and select your 3 best marathons that you've ever done, 3 or 4, and that will make sure the prediction is as accurate as possible. So some people don't do that and their predictions are a little bit off, but if you do that, your prediction should come pretty accurate. So I highly recommend checking this out. Thank you to Kaizen for sponsoring this video series. And of course, finally, Soar Running, my favorite apparel brand. I'm so lucky to have Soar sponsoring this video series because I absolutely love their gear. I wear it every single day in training. I'm gonna be wearing it in the race as well. It's so good for people that have a high sweat rate because it doesn't get heavy. It somehow has the material that doesn't really fill up and make you feel very heavy when you're training. And the gear that they have for marathon racing is just so good. The amount of gel compartments they have in their marathon speed shorts and their tights is unreal, and I'm really looking forward to repping the Soar gear on race day at the Chicago Marathon as well. And the final long run that I'm going to do at least once in this next sort of 2.5 weeks, and maybe even twice, we'll see how things pan out. And you could have already done one of these already, I haven't yet, and it's to do an extended amount of time right at your goal marathon pace. So the two workouts that come to mind for me that I prescribe athletes all the time, that I do myself, is 4x5K right at your goal marathon pace. Once again, assuming conditions are good and super shoes are on and you feel fine. And if some of those things don't exist, then you want to scale that pace back a little bit to adjust for the variables. But 4x5K with 1K recovery, and the 1K recovery should ideally be sort of steady state, not too slow. Or I think the best one you can possibly do that's the most specific to the marathon that I'm going to aim to do somewhere between 10 and 14 days out is 2x10K, which is very similar to 2x6 miles at right around your goal marathon pace, assuming conditions are good. This workout is very tough. You're basically doing half of the marathon distance at your goal marathon pace in training when you're under quite a lot of fatigue. And if you can manage to do this and still feel comfortable, then you've absolutely nailed your training block and you've absolutely nailed the workout. You don't want this workout to be 100% effort. You want it to be probably close to 85 to 90% effort, but you're really practicing running right at that goal pace, and you're trying to be as efficient as possible over the ground and making sure that you're not right at your LT2 threshold quite yet. You're really trying to make sure that you're thinking to yourself during that run, yeah, if I needed to, I would be able to hold this for the full marathon if I really needed to, because at the end of the day, that's what you've set out to do, and that's what the training is all about. It's ideal in these runs, especially the fourth one that I just mentioned, that you're practicing the fueling as well, taking in gels and taking in drinks. So if you're fortunate enough to have someone to ride along with you and give you gels, or you can obviously pack them in your pockets, or if you're very organized, you can set up a table and you can do some loops and you can pick up the drink bottle and gels from the table, or just the drink bottle, and practice the fueling within the long run. These are critical workouts, in my opinion, to do leading up to race day if you want to get the absolute most out of your marathon. I think that if you train for a 5K or a 10K and you do basically regular 5K, 10K training, and you just do a few 20 mile, 32, 35K easy long runs, you'll probably still run the marathon reasonably well. You'll probably still run it to about 90 to 95% of your ability. But if you want to get the absolute most out of your marathon, I think these 4 types of long runs are extremely effective. And if you can add these in, ideally 1 of each, or maybe even 2 of one of them. So for example, I've done 2 of the alternating pace tempo runs, and I've basically done 1 of each of the other ones, and I'm going to do 1 of the 4th consistent marathon goal pace workouts very soon. I think that this is the way to be as prepared as you possibly can be for marathon race day.